360 is more about putting us in the middle of a circle, the middle of a cake, if you like, looking out. And as I spin around all angles of that circle, I can actually see a number of clearly defined sources of stress. And these are the environment, change, organizational stress, where we lie on the stress-prone scale, AB, behavioral stress, and the work-life balance, often known as peripheral stress. Once I have them clearly defined in my mind, I can then identify, firstly, whether I am vulnerable in that particular area, and then secondly, and most importantly, which lever I can pull to alleviate the stress I'm getting from that. It leads to a more action-orientated, controlled approach to stress, rather than the more common, I'm helpless to deal with it.
Please don't let it be morning. Please don't let it be morning. Please don't let it be morning.
Good morning, good morning, good morning, good morning, good morning.
Well, you've just seen a clip there from the legendary Stressed Eric cartoon series, which dates back to the year 2000. And as you'll see, as we go through this program, you'll see how many areas of the 360 Stressed Eric is actually suffering from. Environmental stress is simply the things that are going on in the atmosphere. We open the newspaper, we turn on the TV news, the radio news, things that are going on. Here, of course, some people are simply more vulnerable to it. Some people tend to worry more about things over which they have no control. And part of dealing with stress is about appreciating what I can and what I can't control. And part of what we look at on the course is about segregating the three different items. Ones I have total control over and taking it. The things I have an element of control and negotiating that. And then being realistic over the things over which I have no control, but then seeking to balance those with the more pleasurable, healthier lifestyle. Let me take you to the next area of the circle, and that is probably one of the best known areas of where people are vulnerable from stress, and that of course is the whole area of change. Well, let's take a look at a questionnaire I've got here. It'll take about 5 minutes to fill in. And this is a life events scale. So what you need to do is to go back 12 months, no further back than the year today, and if any of those events have happened to you in the last year, place a little tick by them. Here we've got Kane on 25 and Sarah on 425. I think that's 17 times as much. Now, of course, what's very important to remember here, and please do remember this, that Sarah she may be 17 times more stressed than Kane. But these figures don't tell us that. All they tell us is that in the last year, Sarah has been through 17 times as much potentially stressful change in her life than Kane has. What it doesn't tell us is, of course, that while Sarah has been through a good chunk of change, her ongoing life might be very much under control and very stress-free. Kane, although he hasn't gone through a great deal of change, may not be able to cope very well, whereas Sarah could be one of life's very good copers. Often when people are stressed, you will find they will indulge themselves in further bouts of controllable change. Now, this might be fantastic, and it might just be a case of a change is as good as the rest. But often what it's doing is simply burdening that already stressful person with an extra layer of stress they could actually do without at that moment. So the advice that we would give is, first of all, if you've been through a lot of change over the last year, just allow time for that to work its way through, and to do your best not to keep on throwing yourself into further bouts of change.
Yes!
Having looked at the two most obvious, most talked about parts of stress, the environment and change, let's take a look now at the organisational side. And this, of course, is the stress you get simply from turning up to work each day. Well, this falls into two areas, we believe. There is hierarchical organisational stress, and this, of course, is where the HSE's management standards are very clear. But also there is what we at 360 call what each individual in the organisation brings to the party each day. Some people are better armed each day. They have a much wider range of skills over and above the technical genius needed to do the job. While these skills don't give us any sense of immunity from stress, what they do is make sure we're much better armed each day. So, for example, if a job involves having to deal with difficult clients, customers, even difficult internal people, the person who has that wider range of soft skills is able to maintain that difficult interaction more likely as a pressure. Whereas the person who comes to work each day with their technical skills only will find that is much more likely to be stressful. We've looked at the environment part of the circle, we've looked at change, we've touched on the organisational part of the circle. Let's take a look at a really wide part of the circle now, and we call this where we lie on the stress-prone scale. Stress proneness is often referred to as an A-B line. Originally this was to do with vulnerability to heart disease. Now we simply talk about this as a vulnerability to stress. And some people are very high A types. People who are always busy, rushing around, very active, doing several things at the same time, often worrying about things, telling themselves they can do things better, faster, quicker. People often eat their food rapidly, drink boiling hot coffee, etc. And then we have B-type people. These are life's more truly relaxed, laid-back people. People who are more realistic about time, what can be done and what can't, etc. Now, in the stressed Eric clip you're about to see, you're going to see an extra possible source of stress. Not only do A-type people make themselves more vulnerable to stress by their activities, but also when the two of them get together, the so-called A-B mismatch can be a problem. Whereas Eric is obviously very A-type, his doctor, and probably his closest friend in the film, is very, very B-type, and here you'll see a clip of how they actually interrelate with each other.
What is it this time?
Oh, pressure at work, and I'm really worried about Brian. He's 10 years old and he's still putting things in his mouth. The only things he should have in his mouth at that age are a lot of crappy opinions.
We're all worried about our kids, Eric. But what's the difference between you and me? I won't let it turn my scrot sack into a deadly weapon.
But you've got a different temperament to me, Doc. You don't care. When your wife was giving birth, you were next door having a threesome with a pair of anaesthetists.
Exactly. It's how you react to situations, not the situation itself.
The key thing about A-type people, of course, is in order to make them less like this, what's the worst thing you could ever say to a busy A-type person? Calm down. Calm down or slow down. Absolutely, it just doesn't work. We talk about the goal not being B-type, but about being adapted A. And this is a process whereby we simply get people to list what we refer to as their needlessly excessive A-type behaviours, and then to chip away at them, to develop a new habit that will chip away at that excess.
Are you, pray, going to the nativity play this evening?
Of course, yes, terrific. Wouldn't miss it for the world. Yes, terrific. As I say, terrific. Yes, your daughter now is in it.
Not as much as we'd like.
Oh, really? What's she doing?
Mary, Joseph, the angel, Gabriel, Pilate, Caligula, Drusus, Nero, the narrator, Egypt, and God. And what about Brian?
What we're now going to move on to is the next part of the 360. And that is a session over here in the circle, and this is called behavioural. And here there's a lot of misunderstandings. If I write up on the flipboard here the extremes of the behavioural spectrum, we have passive on the left and aggressive on the right. Now, very often, when we ask people to describe what they think of as passive, they will actually describe it in very similar terms as we looked at B-type just a moment ago. People often think that passive is rather laid back and easygoing, rather chilled and calm. This, of course, is not true at all. And this misunderstanding by so many people causes a huge blockage in trying to deal with our own stress. What passive actually means is lack of control. If we move over and take a look at aggression, on the other hand, while aggressive people also, of course, can be very stressed, we tend to know this group much better for their role in being a stress carrier. Aggressive stress carriers come in two forms. They can be very obvious. These are people who are rude and abusive and obnoxious and loud. But they can also be rather condescending, humiliating and patronising, more like stressed Eric's neighbour in the film we saw earlier. The other thing I would very much urge, if people are suffering areas of stress from the passive side of where they are, and this is very much about developing assertiveness skills. Now, this can be done from a book, but best of all, it's about going on a training course. And if you happen to be working in an organisation who offers this type of training, this can be incredibly useful. The key to this, of course, is about self-expression and gaining control. Peripheral stress, as I said, are the extra stresses you get if you don't exercise, you do eat the wrong things, you don't have a change to your routine, there is no corridor, and work-life balance is about getting these things correct. If I can summarise, over here in the circle, of course, we had the environment, then we had change, then we had organisational, then we had where we lie A-B on the stress-prone scale, and here we had behavioural, and here we have the peripheral area. And that really encloses the 360 way of looking at stress, and how different that is from simply being a weight above our head. Stressed Eric, as he spins around the 360 circle, I'm afraid is peaking in every possible area.